To kick things off and get started right away, I'd like to kick it over to our partner with the Hudson Valley Startup Fund, Johnny LeHane. Johnny, if you want to take it, and let's jump right into our discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike. And thank you, HVEDC, for inviting me and the group that we have today to share what's going on in the Hudson Valley with entrepreneurship and supportive entrepreneurship. Our goal today is actually to share about the entrepreneurial ecosystem, the support groups that have evolved over the last 5 or so years, and to share that through a couple of exciting success stories of Hudson Valley-based businesses. You will see a large cast of characters today. Myself and Tony DeMarco are co-founders of the Hudson Valley Startup Fund, and I'll share a little bit about that. We're also going to be talking to a couple of CEOs, Brad Smith, founder and CEO of Simplecast, and Reva McCollum, founder and CEO of Lessenby. We'll be sharing about some local business accelerators, one that I work with Danny Pataki on. Danny is the CEO and managing director there. And another that my partner in the Startup Fund, Tony DeMarco, manages through his work with the Global Center for Social Entrepreneurship Network, or GCEN, that is called Evergreen. And we'll wrap things up by talking about how SUNY New Paltz is involved as sort of stitching this all together. Again, the man of many hats. Tony works with the Dean of the School of Business, Chris Bacchus, and she'll be joining us to share about that. But first, I actually want to take a step back and set the stage a little bit. 2015 is when I met Tony, and when I realized that I wanted to take my experience in entrepreneurship and my good fortune and success and see how I could share that with other entrepreneurs, especially in the Hudson Valley, as we were looking for ways to support local businesses and scalable startups and create jobs. And that is actually when I first met and heard about Mike Goetz. And Mike at the time was with Hudson River Ventures. And Mike, if you could just share briefly a little bit about what the landscape was back then in 2014-15 and what you saw through the eyes of Hudson River Ventures.
Perfect. Thanks, Johnny. And we're so excited of where the Hudson Valley Startup Fund has continued to build on what Hudson River Ventures had started so many years ago. What we were seeing in the marketplace was, and the reason that Hudson River Ventures, Sean Eldridge, who created the fund, and part of his vision was to provide capital to emerging and startup companies, located specifically in the Hudson Valley, that were finding challenges in raising capital. The traditional banking paths were very limited to startups. People were relying on friends and family, which is not always an easy path to accomplish. And another thing that we were seeing when we got started was that, when there was investment, there tended to not be a backup in terms of mentoring and support to those businesses. There was money potentially getting into the market, but the support that a lot of these startups needed wasn't there. So part of the vision of Hudson River Ventures was not only to make, sound investments and help to encourage entrepreneurship in the Valley, but we also wanted to come in and help mentor those businesses, help them get to that next level, and kind of create ultimately what Excel 7, the Venture Hub, Hudson Valley Startup Fund, and all of our partners are now doing very actively, providing not only resources and capital to the market, but more importantly, I think more valuably, the business mentoring and the entrepreneurial support that really takes these companies to the next level. So as we made probably about 25 different investments throughout the Valley, and ranged from technology-based companies to especially in 3D printing arena. We did a lot in the food and beverage and hospitality sector. We tried to build on the successes of the clusters that were already strong here in the region. And I know the Startup Fund has a little bit different vision, but you still do stuff within those same arenas. And I think it's absolutely critical that we have the ability to get those, not only the dollars, but that support, in the market. So that's where we were. And again, we're so thrilled that you know, the Hudson Valley Startup Fund, you know, kind of helped to accelerate what we had started working on, and to see where you are in the fund. And I know you're going to get into it as part of your presentation. It's very exciting and very needed.
Great. Well, and I appreciate that. And so primarily Hudson River Ventures was you and Sean, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, along with, you know, we had Deanna, who's working with me now also here at Hudson Valley EDC. And we also had a team of, you know, of accountants and lawyers that helped support, you know, what we were doing. Rob Levine, who's actually the board chair of HVDC, was our attorney and helped with, you know, a lot on the legal side of structuring our deals. But generally speaking, it was, you know, it was a small group of people that, you know, tried to not only help work with those businesses, but help them to connect to the other resources that were in the arena. And, you know, we invested heavily in our craft beer sector in the Valley, and many of those businesses are thriving and have been thriving through COVID-19, which is exciting to see as well. So yeah, that's basically how Hudson River Ventures was structured.
Great. So as I said, 2015 is about when I started learning more about the opportunity to invest and support local companies. And Tony was at Marist College at the time and had really noticed that while Marist was interested in supporting local small businesses and startups with services and technology, that there was no funding for that, and Marist had a revenue model around it. So Tony was fortunate enough to be introduced to Eastern New York Angels, which is an investment fund in the Albany-Troy area, and I happened to get introduced to the same network at the same time. So the shift then with the work of Tony, myself, and 3 other managers at the time was to go from an individual investor with a team around them that Mike led to 40 investors. And so the Hudson Valley Startup Fund is what we call a member managed fund. The first fund is made up of 40 accredited investors. Accredited investors generally means individuals who have an income of $250,000 annually, or over $1 million in assets outside of their primary residence. So we beat the bushes, hit the network, and found a fantastic cross-section of primarily Hudson Valley residents who had been successful in one way or another. And we were off to the races investing. We have monthly meetings, and we get to meet folks through our networks for potential investment. In 2015, one of those primary networks and another guy working hard at creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem. The network is Hudson Valley Tech Meetup, and the man was Cale Capishilin, who I had met along with Tony at that time. And through Cale, I got to meet a company that ended up being one of our first few investments. And that's actually where we'd like to go now. I'd like to introduce the founder and CEO of Simplecast, which is a company based out of Kingston, New York. And we want to highlight Simplecast because we think it shows a bit about what's possible with the right support, capital, mentorship, and the right mindset of that we'll get into with Brad a little bit around both how you fundraise and manage a business in the startup phase, as well as the power of distributed business, that supporting a local business doesn't necessarily mean that all of the employees need to be right here. As we've all learned in the time of COVID, this remote thing actually works pretty well. So with that, I want to welcome Brad in.